Tonight, Donald Trump in his own words.
And it never took place. And I will tell you, I made that statement and I said, well, it's politically incorrect. She's not my type.
The video deposition of the former president of the United States is made public. What he said under oath in the defamation trial of E. Jean Carroll. Plus,
the typical signs you would look for were not present here. Obviously, Jack was down. I think you could say situationally depressed.
Jack Reed died by suicide last year after he was bullied by other students. Now his parents are speaking out after the school at the center says it fell tragically short. We'll have that story for you. And
I think we try to create men that are the kind of men women wish existed. That's not to say that those men don't actually exist. It's just I haven't met them yet.
She's one of the most prolific TV showrunners in history and the scribe behind some of the most wanted leading men on television. Shonda Rhimes sits down with our Lindsay Davis and speaks about her career, characters, and what's next in the hit Bridgerton franchise. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mona Kosarabdi in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We are following those stories and much more, including the preparations underway at the U.S.-Mexico border as Title 42 nears its expiration date. Plus, the suspect behind the Idaho student murders is seen in newly obtained body cam footage, the police arrest that led to that video. A massive fire engulfs a refinery plant in Houston, Texas, with chemicals now burning in the air, the latest on the ground. And King Charles is just hours away from becoming Britain's official next monarch. But how are the Commonwealth nations that make up the crown taking it? We go beyond the pomp and circumstance and look at the existential threat facing Charles in the months ahead. Our correspondents are fanned around the world covering those stories and more for us tonight. But we do begin with the deposition video just released in the sexual assault and defamation trial against former President Donald Trump. The video, which was already played for jurors and made public today, shows the former president doubling down on his public statement that accuser E. Jean Carroll is, quote, not my type, while being questioned by her attorney. But when presented this photo of Carroll from a party in the 1980s, he mistakenly identified her as his ex-wife, Marla Maples. Trump also addressed the infamous Access Hollywood tape where he said you could do what you want to women if you're a star. Carroll filed her lawsuit in November alleging Trump defamed her on social media in his denial of her accusation that he raped her in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room. Closing statements in this civil trial are set for Monday. Our Aaron Katursky has been following this from the very beginning.
This is the former president of the United States answering questions in a deposition about a rape he insists he never committed, saying of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll, she's not my type.
I take it, sir, that you stand by that statement today?
Yes, I do.
Donald Trump shown this photo the moment he met Carroll in the late 1980s.
You have in front of you a black and white photograph that we've marked as DJT-23.
When asked to identify the woman in the picture, Trump mistakes Carroll for his ex-wife, Marla Maples.
It's Marla.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla, yeah. That's my wife.
Which woman are you pointing to? No.
Here.
Carroll.
Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was E. Jean Carroll.
Trump continues to insist he didn't rape Carroll because of the way she looks, even after he confused her for his ex-wife. So her lawyer following up with this question.
The only difference between me and other people is I'm honest. She's not my type.
I take it the three women you've married are all your type?
Yeah.
Trump doubling down.
She's accusing me of rape. A woman that I have no idea who she is. It came out of the blue. She's accusing me of rape, of raping her. The worst thing you can do, the worst charge, and it never took place. And I will tell you, I made that statement and I said, well, it's politically incorrect. She's not my type. And that's 100% true. She's not my type.
Carroll's attorneys are trying to convince the jury the alleged rape is part of a pattern of behavior. Two other women testified Trump assaulted them in the same way he described in the infamous Access Hollywood tape, which Trump watched during his deposition.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Trump has dismissed that as locker room talk. But in his deposition, he went further.
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the...
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
Aaron Katursky joins me now. So we've seen the former president's testimony on tape, but what about any in-person testimony from him in this trial? Is that off the table, Aaron?
It is off the table for the most part, Mona. There's a little bit of a caveat. His attorney rested, saying he would not call any witnesses, and that Trump has decided not to testify. But while he was golfing overseas in Europe, Trump hinted that he might come here. So the judge said, mindful of those comments, he would give Trump until Sunday evening to decide whether to file a motion to reopen the case for the sole purpose of him coming here to testify. His defense attorney says it's not going to happen. We'll see. Closing statements are expected here Monday morning, Mona, and the jury should have the case by Tuesday. Mona.
All right, Aaron Katursky, thank you. Now to that deadly subway confrontation here in New York and the protests that have followed. A former Marine is seen in disturbing video using a chokehold to restrain a man who witnesses say was acting erratically and threatening others. That man died, and now the case is expected to go before a grand jury next week, with authorities asking any additional witnesses to come forward. Here's ABC's Whit Johnson.
Justice for Jordan!
Tonight, protesters calling for the arrest of a Marine veteran who allegedly put a homeless man in a deadly chokehold. The case expected to go before a grand jury next week, sparking debate over public safety and mental illness. ABC News confirming that former Marine is 24-year-old Daniel Penny, a sergeant who served at Camp Lejeune. Penny seen in this disturbing video restraining 30-year-old Jordan Neely in a chokehold for nearly 3 minutes. Sources tell us Neely was yelling and acting erratically on the subway, but had not become physically violent. Other passengers are also seen holding him down. Neely was later pronounced dead at the hospital.
The individual who did this was to testify at some point to say I was in fear of my life or I just wanted to end this situation as best I could. Those things matter. Those statements from the witnesses are really going to play a big role in this.
Years ago, Neely was known as a Michael Jackson impersonator. But he had a troubled past, including more than 40 arrests and a history of mental illness, seen here on the subway just days before he died. Neely's family attorney now seeking a trial and conviction.
Jordan Neely had no chance with 2 other strap hangers holding his arms and a trained killer behind him with a chokehold on that he had no chance of getting out of.
And let's get right to Whit Johnson. Whit, that Marine was questioned and released, and you're learning more about his explanation to authorities?
Mona, that's right. Sources tell ABC News that former Marine Daniel Penny explained to police that he was not trying to kill Neely, but instead was only trying to hold him until officers arrived at the scene. Detectives have now interviewed more than half a dozen witnesses, and they're now calling for more to come forward as they investigate. Mona.
Whit Johnson, thank you. In Houston, Texas tonight, a massive fire at a Shell refinery. Local officials say 2 heavy gas oils are burning, but that the inferno is well contained. The blaze was reported just before 3 p.m. local time. Thick black smoke could be seen for miles. Officials say all employees were evacuated. At least 5 suffered minor injuries. Officials are seeing an uptick in migrants and preparing for a large surge with the pandemic-era Title 42 policy set to expire in just 6 days. Cities along both sides of the border already overwhelmed and now bracing for more to come as the Secretary of Homeland Security assures all steps are being taken. ABC's Maria Villarreal is there.
Tonight, some of the last migrants to be expelled under Title 42, wearing chains, shepherded onto an airplane headed for Guatemala. The policy, which allows the U.S. to expel migrants using COVID-era restrictions, will end next week. Officials anticipating as many as 10,000 migrants crossing the border each day, far beyond the 3,500 per day authorities can comfortably handle. Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas touring a newly built migrant processing facility here in Brownsville, Texas today, praising his department's efforts.
What we are seeing is an operation that was stood up in 72 hours by the United States Border Patrol to address a surge.
Some people would say, though, this feels like we're treading water.
We are maximizing the resources we have to deliver the most efficient result.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
We traveled to a makeshift migrant camp in Matamoros, just across the Rio Grande River.
This young mother right here just got to the camp today, and she's already choosing to go across. She says she just doesn't have the time to wait for an appointment. She has a 1-year-old with her and 2 young little girls that already went across.
Pastor Abraham Barbary with One Mission Ministries worries the situation will only get worse.
I don't think we are prepared. More asylum seekers are going to come, and this is just going to get bigger.
Maria joins us now from Brownsville, Texas. And Maria, the impact of this crisis is being felt well beyond the border.
Mona, that's absolutely right. Just today, New York City is announcing that they are out of emergency shelter space. They're going to be housing asylum seekers in places like City Gymnasium, and also they're working with nearby counties to use emergency facilities that they run in other counties. So obviously right now, Brownsville, El Paso, Laredo, Texas, those aren't the only places that we will probably be talking about over the next week or so.
All right, ABC's Maria Villarreal, thank you. New body camera footage has been released in the investigation into the brutal murders of 4 Idaho college students. Authorities say it's from their search of suspect Brian Koberger's apartment and a traffic stop a month before the murders. Koberger driving the same white Hyundai Elantra police believe he used the night of the killings. Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef.
Tonight, newly released police body camera footage showing the moments law enforcement raided Idaho murder suspect Brian Koberger's apartment.
Show yourself!
Police serving that search warrant the morning after his arrest in connection with the murders of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. The heavily redacted video doesn't show what they found, but in documents, authorities say they recovered 2 items that tested presumptively positive for blood, including an uncased pillow and a mattress cover with a brown irregular drip, and noted the rented apartment appeared sparsely furnished, including no shower curtain in the bathroom, and the trash cans appeared empty.
I'm just curious about the law.
Another newly released video showing police pulling Koberger over in October, a month before the murders.
I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
Driving the same white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates that police believe he used the night of the murders. Koberger ultimately talking his way out of a ticket for running a red light.
Ariel Reshef joins us now. Ariel, Koberger sent a message through his attorney.
That's right, Mona. Koberger telling his attorney that he believes he will be exonerated, but he has not yet entered a plea and is due in court on June 26th. Mona?
Ariel Reshef, thank you. 24 hours after Russia blamed the U.S. for an attempted assassination of Vladimir Putin, a deputy foreign minister warns that Russia and the U.S. are on the edge of an open armed conflict. This comes as divisions grow among Russian forces in Ukraine, with the head of the Wagner mercenary group now threatening to withdraw from the front lines. ABC's Marcus Moore is in Ukraine tonight.
Russia tonight hurling new threats aimed at the U.S. The deputy foreign minister warning they're, quote, on the verge of an open armed conflict with the United States. Again claiming Ukraine carried out a drone attack on the Kremlin Wednesday, attempting to assassinate Russian President Vladimir Putin at the direction of the U.S. White House spokesman John Kirby firmly denying the allegations that the U.S. was involved as, quote, a blatant lie. Still, Russia warning of possible retaliation, saying it will respond when and wherever it sees fit. On the battlefield, nightmarish new video reportedly showing Russian incendiary bombs burning in a Ukrainian-held pocket of Bakhmut, and a potentially major development on that battlefield today. The head of Moscow's Wagner mercenary group says he's pulling his troops out of the eastern Ukrainian city because they're not being supplied with enough ammunition. In a video statement, Yevgeny Prigozhin calling his Russian leadership cowards and saying his troops will leave Bakhmut next week on May 10th. Western officials say half of the 20,000 Russian troops killed in Ukraine since December were Wagner fighters in Bakhmut. Ukrainian officials tonight voicing skepticism that the Wagner group actually plans to withdraw.
Marcus Moore joins us from Ukraine tonight. Marcus, if the Wagner leader makes good on his threat to pull out of Bakhmut, how many fighters might be involved?
Well, Mona, as of March 30th, U.S. officials estimated there were close to 10,000 Wagner mercenaries fighting in and around Bakhmut, and it's widely believed that if all of those fighters were to leave, Russia would be able to keep up the fight with a large contingent of its soldiers still there. Mona.
Marcus Moore in Ukraine. Thank you. Now to the January 6 riots and the longest sentence to date handed down by a judge in a case stemming from the incident. Prosecutors described Peter Schwartz as one of the most violent and aggressive participants in the riots, throwing a chair at officers to create an opening within the police line at the Capitol and stealing pepper spray and other chemicals from retreating officers to later use in the attack. Defense lawyers argued for leniency, saying their client misunderstood the facts of the 2020 election. Now to the new scrutiny on Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas after the Washington Post reported that a judicial activist directed tens of thousands of dollars in fees to the justice's wife, Ginny Thomas. Those payments were accompanied with the words, quote, "no mention of Ginny on the billing paperwork," drawing even more scrutiny. Here's ABC's senior national correspondent, Terry Moran.
For several years, Ginny Thomas, wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, was paid tens of thousands of dollars for consulting work in a secretive arrangement brokered by a powerful conservative activist who specified that Ginny Thomas's name should be left off billing records, according to the Washington Post. The Post reports that Leonard Leo, the influential founder of the Federalist Society, a key group in the Republican effort to make the federal judiciary more conservative, arranged for Ginny Thomas to be paid at least $80,000 through a nonprofit group he advises. Leo told that group not to record her name, writing, "no mention of Ginny, of course." That same year, the nonprofit group filed an amicus brief in a landmark voting rights case before the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas, already under scrutiny for taking lavish vacations courtesy of a billionaire GOP megadonor who also bought Thomas's mother's house and helped pay for his great-nephew's private school. Democrats and some Republicans are calling for a cleanup at the court.
The drip, drip, drip of these destructive disclosures is going to destroy the United States Supreme Court.
Terry Moran joins me now. Terry, any reaction from Leonard Leo of the Federalist Society to the Washington Post's report?
There has been, Mona. Leonard Leo, in a statement to the Post, called Ginny Thomas's work, quote, invaluable, and he added that her work did not involve anything connected with the court's business or with other legal issues. As for keeping her name off the paperwork, he said he was trying to, quote, protect the privacy of Justice Thomas and his wife, which critics say is part of the problem here. The Thomases, when asked for comment by the Post, they did not respond. Mona?
Terry Moran in the nation's capital. Thank you. The COVID-19 pandemic is no longer considered a global health emergency. The World Health Organization made that announcement today, 2 years and 3 months after declaring the coronavirus an international crisis in January 2020. At least 7 million people have died worldwide since health officials warned that while the emergency may be over, the virus remains a public health threat. The U.S. public health emergency is set to expire next week. Now to the economy and another sign of a resilient job market despite rising interest rates, inflation, and signs of a banking crisis. 253,000 jobs were added in April, according to the Labor Department, with the unemployment rate dipping to 3.4%. That matches a 54-year low. Healthcare and hospitality were among the sectors where job growth was particularly strong. The stock market responded positively, with the Dow closing up more than 500 points to end the week. The countdown to the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla is down to just hours. It's an event that hasn't been seen in 70 years. Royal supports are ready and already lining the streets. ABC's James Longman reports from London.
Tonight, the coronation of King Charles III just hours away. The King making a surprise appearance this afternoon, greeting families who travelled across the world to witness history. It's been a long journey. King Charles was just 4 years old when his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, took the throne in 1953. As a boy, Charles struggled at boarding school and he was bullied. He wrote letters home saying how lonely he was. His marriage to Princess Diana in 1981 was watched by the world. Just 16 years later, in 1997, he would walk his two sons, Princes William and Harry, behind their mother's casket at her funeral. King Charles was the longest heir apparent in royal history. For decades, a campaigning Prince of Wales, passionately ahead of his time on climate change and sustainability. But he becomes king with support for the monarchy ebbing away. Meghan and Harry's departure triggered questions about this ancient institution's capacity for change. We know Harry will be there alone tomorrow. The world will wait to see if the family portrait on the balcony will include him. And something thought impossible not long ago, Camilla will be crowned queen alongside him. It'll be the second coronation ever televised, the first with his mother's, Queen Elizabeth, when she was just 25 years old. Now, at 74, he'll be the oldest monarch ever to take the British throne. Britain's constitutional history played out in spectacular pageantry, a sight not seen in nearly a century, and the job Charles has waited on for a lifetime.
And thanks to James Longman in London. ABC News will have full coverage of the coronation of King Charles III tomorrow morning beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern. And if you missed the live coronation, ABC News Live will have coverage from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern. We hope that you'll check it out. We have so much more to get to here on Prime. Coming up, an 8-year-old shot and killed when police opened fire outside a high school football game. The sentence they received in connection with her death. But next, taking a closer look at the bullying and the devastation it can cause, the tragic outcomes as school officials rethink policies and families deal with heartbreaking losses.
Families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
In Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are taking a closer look at bullying and its impact on the psyche of our country's youngest. It's something that impacts so many people, and in some cases, the outcome can be tragic. And a warning, some of the video of a violent bullying incident that you're about to see is disturbing. Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
So the first thing that comes to mind when we think about Jack is kindness. He really loved people. He loved his community.
Bill and Elizabeth Reed's son Jack loved history, politics, and dreamt of a life in public service.
When he was elected chairman of his school, his introductory speech was about how important it was to be kind to others.
But in the spring of 2021, the Reeds say Jack began to be bullied by some students at his elite boarding school in New Jersey, a year-long nightmare for Jack that ended with him taking his own life in April 2022.
I just miss him. I mean, he was my buddy, our youngest, and he always talked to us about how when he grew up, he was going to take care of us.
Now, 1 year later, these grieving parents are receiving a rare admission of failure to protect Jack from months of bullying. The Lawrenceville school seen in this promotional video now saying in a statement on their website that they fell tragically short and admitting that bullying and unkind behavior and actions taken or not taken by the school likely contributed to Jack's death.
I think what the school did was really important in shining a light on the work that needs to be done to prevent bullying and to keep students safe on campus.
Jack's story is yet another example of the toxic and sometimes lethal mix of bullying and social media. The tragedy raising the question of accountability and who's responsible for keeping teenagers safe.
Unfortunately, children and adolescents, they have not learned coping skills yet to deal adequately with life stressors. This lack of coping skills combined with bullying and impulsivity can lead to something like suicide.
The CDC recently reporting suicide is now the second leading cause of death among adolescents ages 10 to 14. For Jack, his bullying began when an untrue rumor spread across campus he had committed sexual assault by kissing a girl. Then, that fall, a false claim that Jack was a rapist was posted anonymously to a nationwide student app, and conversations with Jack were secretly recorded.
He ran for president of his house. He was elected. And within 2 days, there was a rumor posted online that the new president of Dickinson House was a rapist.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
You can imagine for a 16-year-old boy, 17-year-old boy, how damaging that is. And he was worried that it was permanent, that he'd never be able to do anything publicly in public service, and didn't know how he was going to get past it.
The Lawrenceville school acknowledges that Jack brought that anonymous post to the school's attention in October 2021, which led the school to learn about the rumors of sexual assault and the surreptitious recording. The Lawrenceville school says it investigated the rumors and claims about Jack, the dean of student office concluding Jack had not committed sexual assault. But the school admits it never publicly shared the results or told Jack about their findings to clear his name.
Your reputation is everything as a teenager. So when your reputation is jeopardized, it is just as tragic as sometimes, for a teenager as losing a loved one. Humiliation is a big stressor, and it's not something that we should take lightly or underestimate its impact in teenagers.
Then, on April 30th, 2022, a student who was disciplined for bullying Jack was expelled for something the school says was unrelated to Jack's case. But the school admits they allowed that student to return back to campus, largely unsupervised, back to the dorm where Jack lived. Students there bullying Jack again. Jack took his life that night.
We know that this came upon him very quickly, and he didn't think about the future. He was just in terrible despair and pain.
I am a clinical psychologist. The typical signs you would look for were not present here. Obviously, Jack was down. I think you could say situationally depressed because of this bullying, but he did not have mental illness. He did not have a drug or alcohol problem. There were no prior attempts.
After Jack's death, the school's board undertook a 5-month investigation and sent a letter to the community sharing some of the findings of their investigation, including there were missed opportunities along the way to bring instances of cruelty or teasing to the attention of adults and other instances in which the involvement of an adult might have made a difference. Adults were unaware of the rumors and the surrounding circumstances for 11 months.
They've committed to a plan to improve the culture in the school, to be against bullying and support and protect the kids who are victims of bullying. We think that's very, very important.
Lawrenceville also promising to create policies to spot and stop bullying and agreeing to contribute to multiple nonprofits that focus on bullying and suicide prevention. Jack's parents hoping to extend public school bullying protections to all students.
In New Jersey and New York, there are established anti-bullying statutes, but they don't govern private institutions. They don't govern charter schools or parochial schools.
But even when there are laws on the books to protect children in public schools, some have still come under fire for not doing enough.
I'm angry and I am upset with every single one of you guys. You are here to protect the students.
Adriana Kutch, a 14-year-old girl from Central Regional High School in Bayville, New Jersey, took her own life in February of this year. Her death coming 2 days after a video of her being beaten by classmates in the hallway was posted online and then went viral. Adriana's father, Michael Kutch, saying constant bullying and rumors drove his child to take her own life.
Everybody, without exception, who knew Adriana knew she was witty,
funny, smart, strong. You know, getting hit in the face with a water bottle didn't hurt Adriana. What hurt Adriana was the embarrassment and humiliation. They just kept coming at her.
The school eventually expelled the 4 students who attacked Adriana. The Ocean County Prosecutor's Office ultimately charging all 4 with assault-related charges. Adriana's death part of what some are calling a nationwide mental health crisis involving teenage girls. According to the recent CDC report, nearly 1 in 3 teenage girls seriously considered attempting suicide in 2021, up nearly 60% from a decade ago.
We don't know exactly what's causing it. And unfortunately, in the school system, we are lacking resources to deal with this rapid rise in demand.
In February, the acting superintendent of the districts at Central Regional High School followed all state laws in Adriana's situation and denied the school has a problem with violence.
Based on our data alone, it doesn't indicate that we're a culture of violence. We don't condone that.
The acting superintendent saying that as of March, an action plan is underway to enhance and increase awareness of student support services and expand communications channels with parents and students. Adriana's family has since filed a tort claim with the intent to file a lawsuit against the Board of Education.
When I heard about Adriana, it was truly like experiencing Mallory's death all over again.
Diane Grossman knows the unbearable pain of losing a child to bullying. Her daughter Mallory took her own life when she was just 12 years old after being bullied by other students at her middle school.
This is not a central regional problem. This is a cultural and across the board.
Mallory's story is not this like.
Now Diane and members of Mallory's Army, a group she co-founded alongside her husband, speaking to schools across the country.
You can learn a lot from kids,
including Adriana Kutch's school in 2020.
We talk about bullying and its behavior. And I think that school systems like to check boxes. I'm disappointed that they heard about Mallory, they knew about Mallory, they were warned, and they just continued to do practice as normal.
For the Reed family, part of their mission now, telling Jack's story in the hopes that it saves other lives, creating the Jack Reed Foundation to raise awareness.
Why is it so important to share Jack's story?
He would want to protect other children from the things that happened to him.
He would say, help others, the system needs to change, spread the love. I can hear him saying, spread the love, Mama.
Our thanks to Eva Pilgrim for that important story. For anyone struggling with thoughts of suicide, substance abuse, or mental health crisis, feel free to help is available and feel free to call or text 988. Trained crisis counselors are available for free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we still have much more to get to coming up. An arrest is made in the murder of a woman killed on a hiking trail. The chilling details about what happened in the moments before she was stabbed to death. Plus, acclaimed showrunner Shonda Rhimes tells us about her new series, Queen Charlotte, what we can expect from season 3 of Bridgerton, and her thoughts on writing Dream Men.
You have talked before about how the men you create are aspirational, and so much so that it's the reason that you'll never get married. Explain that, what you mean by that.
I think we try to create men that are the kind of men women wish existed. That's not to say that those men don't actually exist. It's just I haven't met them yet.
But next, the eyes of the world will be on England tomorrow for the coronation. We look at the royal tradition by the numbers.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
From America's #1 news comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and customizable to your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Brooke Shields, the most photographed woman in the world.
A sexualized child model. Exploitation. What happened to her isn't really about her, it's just about women.
I let myself be vulnerable, and this is the first time I've ever spoken about what happened. I thought my one no should have been enough, you know.
When someone like Brooke Shields talks about it, it makes a difference.
I'm amazed that I survived any of it.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. But a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you. Yes, Whoopi!
This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there. You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good. Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Almond Mom is a little bit bought into diet culture, but it tends to veer on the side of overdoing it. I had to hit spin class, I had to earn this food.
To be in a restrictive mode with food is almost like the worst joke ever.
Food should not be good or bad.
Every soul's body is important, no matter what size it is.
Where body positivity has the potential to become detrimental is the, nah, girl, you're good.
Impact by Nightline, now streaming on Hulu. This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey, I'm David Muir. Wherever the story, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
As a well-heeled and well-connected gather in London for tomorrow's coronation, we have a rundown on Britain's first coronation in 70 years by the numbers. 957 years, that's how long Britain has been ringing in new monarchs at Westminster Abbey. King Charles III will be the 40th monarch crowned in the royal church. The 74-year-old is the oldest monarch ever crowned. 9-year-old Prince George will become the youngest future king to play an official role at a coronation. For the ceremony, Charles will wear a crown of 400 gemstones, and Queen Consort Camilla will carry some 2,800 diamonds, estimated to be worth at least £400 million in her crown. 2,200 guests will be attending, including members of the royal family, representatives from 203 countries, celebrities, and 850 community representatives. A relatively small gathering compared to the 8,251 attendees for Queen Elizabeth's coronation. And at 1.5 hours, King Charles' ceremony will be half as long as his mother's, yet it will reportedly cost about £100 million, twice as much as Queen Elizabeth's in today's terms. 51% of Britons polled said they do not think taxpayers should foot the bill for the celebrations. About 1,600 people are expected to protest on Coronation Day. We're covering the coronation from from all angles here at ABC News Live. Later on Prime, we'll talk to British journalist and author Omid Scobie about the calls for the royal family to answer for its part in colonialism and the slave trade. And much more ahead here on Prime. They were convicted of killing their parents nearly 3 decades ago. Now the new evidence that Menendez brothers hope could get them a new trial. Video shows the tense moments as the medvac rescue on a cruise ship is threatened by severe weather. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
It takes asking the straightforward, tough questions.
Do you believe that Donald Trump should ever be president again?
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
The news-making interviews.
You said that there were 6 friends. One of them was sick.
Yeah.
Do you have future political aspirations?
Going to the front line.
The search for survivors. How does this war end?
And getting to the heart of the story.
Thank you for being here. We'll be here for the long run.
ABC News, #1 in the morning, the #1 newscast, #1 in daytime talk, Friday nights, Sunday mornings versus the competition, and the #1 streaming news. Thank you for making ABC News America's trusted, straightforward first choice.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. But a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
We're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Almond Mom is a little bit bought into diet culture, but it tends to veer on the side of overdoing it. Had to hit spin class, I had to earn this food.
To be in a restrictive mode with food is almost like the worst joke ever.
Food should not be good or bad.
Every soul's body is important, no matter what size it is.
Where body positivity has the potential to become detrimental is the "nah girl, you're good."
Impact by Nightline, now streaming on Hulu.
Get ready, America, every Friday.
The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff to buy right now? I really love that. It's time to buy the right stuff.
Yes!
And save big time, too.
The right stuff.
Fridays on GMA. You're going to love it.
13 women opened their doors to the man who would end their lives.
Truth and Lies, The Boston Strangler, the new true crime podcast series. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts. And watch Boston Strangler, starring Keira Knightley, streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
The police plea deal and the death of an 8-year-old. New evidence in the Menendez brothers case and a woman accused of faking her own kidnapping. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
Three former Pennsylvania police officers who pled guilty in the death of an 8-year-old girl were sentenced to 5 years of probation with 11 months on house arrest. The officers had pled guilty to 10 charges of reckless endangerment in the death of Fanta Ability outside a high school football game in 2021. As part of the plea deal, manslaughter charges against the officers were dropped. An investigation found those officers negligently shot at a car they mistakenly thought was involved in gunfire that broke out near the game. In all, 4 people were hit by police bullets.
We forgave, but we will not forget
Fanta Birete.
Attorneys for the Menendez brothers requested their decades-old conviction for killing their parents be overturned.
Their attorneys point to evidence found by a relative, which they say corroborates the brothers' allegation of abuse. It's a letter written by Eric Menendez to one of his cousins 8 months before the killings that reads, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, but it's worse for me now." The court documents also cite a new documentary on the streaming service Peacock, where a former member of the boy band Menudo also accuses Jose Menendez of abuse.
A change is coming to the White House. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky says she will depart at the end of June. She has served in the position since the beginning of the Biden administration and ushered the administration through COVID-19. Walensky's exit comes with the U.S.'s COVID-19 emergencies set to end next week. The White House did not specify who would replace her. The suspect in the murder of a hiker in Phoenix last weekend made his first court appearance a day after his arrest.
New documents say Lauren Heike was stabbed 15 times. DNA found on her shoe traced to 22-year-old Zion William Teasley. The documents say Teasley denied involvement, but added if he was going to do something like that, it wouldn't be premeditated.
A Pennsylvania woman declared missing earlier this week now faces several charges after it was revealed she faked her own abduction. Chloe Stein had apparently disappeared Monday night. Her last known correspondence was a text to her boyfriend saying she was being pulled over. After an urgent search, police found her safe after acting on a tip. Stein reportedly told police at first she was abducted at gunpoint by a masked man before eventually admitting she made up the story. Dramatic video shows a Coast Guard helicopter attempting to navigate through severe weather to evacuate a passenger from a cruise ship. Officials were trying to reach a patient with heart attack symptoms on board a ship off the shore of Alabama, the Gulf of Mexico. But a severe squall caused the helicopter to back off and even come close to the surface of the water. Another helicopter returned later and was successful in evacuating the patient to New Orleans for medical treatment.
The coronation of King Charles III is only hours away, and while some see it as a joyous occasion, the monarchy is still the center of controversy across the globe, with certain nations examining ways to defect from the monarchy entirely following the Queen's death last year. To talk more about this is ABC News Royals contributor and royal editor for Harper's Bazaar, Omid Scobie. Omid, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Mona. Yeah, as you say, there is excitement in London, but of course, across the Commonwealth, there is also sort of a mixture of emotions, including apathy from many countries that do feel that, you know, whilst tomorrow will be a sort of grand display of the pomp and pageantry that, of course, we all associate with the royal family, those soldiers that we see carrying flags from the Bahamas, South Africa, Tuvalu in that military procession, not only are there to sort of affirm the ties that bind Britain and former colonies, but they're also a jarring reminder of the oppression and colonialism caused by the monarchy and the reparatory justice that we haven't actually seen come from the institution yet.
And particularly two countries, including Belize and Jamaica, are hinting at dropping the monarch as head of state. Can you touch a little bit on just the sentiment, and is this maybe the first of a ripple effect?
Of course, the Commonwealth in itself was sort of like a redo of the British Empire. It was the Queen's effort to sort of put all of those countries on the same level and undo many of the mistakes of the past that Britain, of course, were at the center of. Of course, now we're left within those 50-something countries, 14 of them have the monarch still as the head of state. So whilst tomorrow will be a show of the sort of size and power and strength of the monarchy, it's also a reminder that this is a shrinking institution coming at a time when Britain's own power on the world stage is also shrinking.
There's no debating it is a historical moment indeed, but there is a lot of discussion as well about the cost of the coronation. The three-day celebration is expected to cost British taxpayers around $125 million. How is the British public reacting to that number, and could it hurt the public perception of the royal family that they're working so hard to maintain?
Yeah, of course, this all comes at a time when the country's on the brink of a recession. We're knee-deep in a cost of living crisis. The middle class are queuing up at food banks. It's not just the sort of less advantaged in this country. This is now a sort of nationwide problem. food is becoming an issue. It's becoming more and more expensive. I think post-Brexit, some say that we can expect a sort of $350 million or so return on that investment within the hospitality sector. Of course, London right now is teeming with tourists who have come to sort of like catch a slice of the royal action.
I know, but you did touch on the dark history of colonization. There has been global calls for the royal family to begin reparations, returning stolen wealth from other countries. How can we expect King Charles to address those calls under his rule?
Well, I think the irony, of course, is during that coronation ceremony, we're going to see some of the fruits of the days of colonialism right in front of us. The Cullinan diamond, which was split up into several diamonds, will be on Queen Camilla's head. It will be in the scepter carried by King Charles. That diamond has a huge amount of controversy surrounding it because, of course, it was found in a mine in Pretoria in South Africa during the time of colonial Britain's takeover of that country. So, you know, these are sort of the reminders that there is still so much unfinished business for the royal family when it comes to making amends for mistakes from the past. So yes, while it's great to see him sort of take that first step forward in terms of allowing historians and researchers to look into the royal family's links, many do say that it's not enough. And you only need to take a look at the monarchies in other parts of the world.
All right, Oman Scobie, thank you so much for your insight and your time as well.
Thank you.
Since its premiere in 2020, Bridgerton has become a bombshell success as one of the most watched series on Netflix. It's now sparked a new prequel spin-off series, Queen Charlotte, focusing on the early life of a fan favorite character. And the creator behind this new show has a long list of hit series under her belt, including Grey's Anatomy and, of course, Scandal. In tonight's Streamlined, we talked to acclaimed showrunner Shonda Rhimes about what she calls her dream project.
Why me?
Charlotte, but there are worse fates than marrying the King of England.
It is time we were united as a society. My life as queen was difficult.
Hello, Charlotte.
Your Majesty.
To you, I'm George.
Why start the prequel series with Queen Charlotte?
I really loved that character. I mean, I'd watched the character in Bridgerton. I'd watch what Golda would do with that character, and I thought she's fascinating. She's so interesting. And she's got a hole in her life that we're not seeing in Bridgerton because she's sort of the front-facing version of her. Plus, her marriage. You know, obviously, she had a great love story. She's been married to this man for, I think, 60 years their marriage lasted in real life. And there were clearly troubles, yet she truly loved him. They seemed to be sort of staying together, not for small reasons. And I wanted to play that out. And I also wanted to see this woman come into her power. That was interesting to me.
Take Charlotte to the seamstress so we can have her gown fitted.
Oh, no need. I brought my wedding gown. It is quite a perfect fit.
But we have provided a gown for you.
My gown was designed just for the wedding in Paris. The lace is handmade by nuns. The modiste called it à la mode.
I'm curious how much of the bones of this you went into the archives to really research, to have some kind of historical accuracy.
We worked really hard on that in a lot of ways. Did a ton of research. I actually got to visit Kew, where King George lived. And I got to work with this amazing historian, Polly Putnam, who was really an expert on this topic. And we talked about all the things that were real and that you'd want to see. And then we talked about all the things that we could mess with. You know, there were some fixed points I felt like we couldn't mess with, but other than that, I wanted the essence of the characters. I wasn't trying to tell them. And by the way, this is not the history of Queen Charlotte, you know, the real Queen Charlotte. It's the history of the Queen Charlotte that we know from the Bridgerton world. So different.
But with the real Queen Charlotte, I mean, historians have long tried to say she really wasn't black, or there's been a question. I'm curious how much of this was born out of your own intrigue about the real Queen Charlotte and her heritage.
Well, I mean, we definitely talked about it when we added her as a character in the Bridgerton universe. It felt important, and we talked about the fact that there are some historians who think she was. There's a lot of historians who spend an excess amount of energy trying to say she wasn't. And what would it be like if she was just the woman that we think she is?
Be careful. You are the first of your kind. You must secure your position. Your Majesty, your focus should be your country. You are our queen.
When did you realize I really have something? I mean, because you create shows, movies that the world starts talking about. And so I'm curious, I guess it's in two parts. Like, what's the secret sauce of that? And when did you realize people really like what I do?
I think for me, I just was writing characters I wanted to see. I was writing stories I wanted to see. I wasn't necessarily trying to grab an audience. I was like, I know what I'm not seeing on TV, and I know what I want to see on TV. So for me, I don't know. I don't know if it ever truly sunk in until I was being inducted to the Television Academy Hall of Fame. That was such a freakish moment for me to think like, oh, wait, maybe I can relax a little bit.
You have talked before about how the men you create are aspirational, and so much so that it's the reason that you'll never get married. Explain that, what you mean by that.
I think we try to create men that are the kind of men women wish existed. That's not to say that those men don't actually exist. It's just I haven't met them yet. But I feel like we want to create men who are three-dimensional, but who treat women the way they should be treated. And if they're not treating women the way they should be treated, we understand that that's not the way.
You and me.
You and me.
Congratulations on the BAFTA Special Award. Has the success sunk in, and the fact that you're really at the forefront of changing cultural norms potentially in society through the shows that we watch?
I don't know that that can ever sink in. I mean, it's large. It's a big thing to hold. So I think I'm still absorbing it all.
Tell us what you're doing behind the scenes with the crews, for example, because we know that you've long been responsible for diversity, inclusion in front of the camera, but also like the Ladder program, for example.
We created some initiatives when we got to London and discovered that there wasn't a lot of diversity in the crew. And we felt strongly, all of us as a team at John Glenn felt strongly that we had to make that happen in some way. So we created this program called The Ladder, which basically takes people and trains them, pays them to learn on set while we're shooting, and then a lot of those people then go off to get other jobs. And we're doing it in the United States now, and we're working with the unions to make that happen too.
Season 3 of Bridgerton, is there anything you can tell us? Any little nugget at all?
Everybody asks me, you know how I am about spoilers. So I'll say it's sexy and witty and very interesting because Penelope is a woman who works. She has a job. And so it's interesting to see how that plays into her storyline.
And when can we expect that?
There's not a release date yet,
okay.
But it's coming
soon.
I hope so.
So obviously we started with Queen Charlotte. Any other planned spin-offs going forward?
Right now, no. I don't have one. I've considered Violet because I think she's very interesting. But no, at this point, I don't have plans for it. I just wanted to tell this story.
What's your advice for people who are aspiring to be the next Shonda Rhimes? And I'm curious also if that advice would differ for people of color.
Oh, interesting. Well, first I say you don't want to be the next Shonda Rhimes. You want to be the next you, because I think that that's the way to go. And also I think if you're a writer and you are writing every day and you are very determined, then you need to keep your eye on the prize. Like, just move forward. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be disappointments. But I always say, if you're in the room, you're there because you belong in that room. So own whatever room you're in.
I don't mind. I wouldn't mind being the next Shonda Rhimes. Or thanks to Lindsay for that story. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Mona Kosar-Abdi. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you for streaming with us.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what people don't see during the commercial breaks.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day.
I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good. Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yeah.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Almond Mom is a little bit bought into diet culture, but it tends to veer on the side of overdoing it. Had to hit spin class, I had to earn this food.
To be in a restrictive mode with food is almost like the worst joke ever.
Food should not be good or bad.
Every soul's body is important, no matter what size it is.
Where body positivity has the potential to become detrimental is the, nah, girl, you're good.
Impact by Nightly.
California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
I'm Mona Kosar-Abdi. Thank you for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. The video deposition of Donald Trump that played before the jury in the E. Jean Carroll sexual assault and defamation trial was made public today. It shows the former president doubling down on his public statement that Carroll is, quote, not my type, and discussing the infamous Access Hollywood tape in which he said you could do what you want to women if you're a star. In New York, there are growing calls to arrest the former Marine seen in a disturbing video using a chokehold to restrain a man who witnesses say was acting erratically and threatening others. That man did not survive. The case is expected to go before a grand jury next week, with authorities asking any additional witnesses to come forward. Today's job report signaled a resilient job market despite rising interest rates, inflation, and signs of a banking crisis. 253,000 jobs were added in April, according to the Labor Department, with the unemployment rate dipping to 3.4%. That matches a 54-year low. The stock market responded positively, with the Dow closing up more than 500 points to end the week. After more than 3 years, the WHO today declared COVID is no longer qualifies as a global health emergency. The outbreak is blamed for more than 7 million deaths around the world. Health officials warned that while the emergency may be over, the virus remains a public health threat. The U.S. public health emergency is set to expire next week. A federal judge today handed down the longest sentence to date in a case stemming from the January 6 riots. Prosecutors described Peter Schwartz as one of the most violent and aggressive participants in the riots. His defense argued for leniency, saying their client misunderstood the facts of the 2020 election. And in Houston, Texas tonight, a massive fire at a Shell refinery. Local officials say 2 heavy gas oils are burning, but that inferno is well contained. The blaze was reported just before 3 p.m. local time. Thick black smoke could be seen for miles. Officials say all employees were evacuated. At least 5 suffered minor injuries. Those are headlines for the top of this hour. Now stay tuned for the ABC News special, Our America, Trouble on Tap, from our owned television stations in partnership with the National Geographic, examining access to safe drinking water here in the United States.
The beauty of North Carolina